Good morning, WayFam from Berlin.
I'm Ashley, this is my husband Josh. Welcome to our channel.
We sold everything we had to travel the world, and now we want to share with you the way away.
So be sure to subscribe down below, hit the little bell, and give us a like for more adventures.
Let's go. So we have come to Berlin. Finally, in yesterday's video you saw us arrive. It was a very long, slow day.
Very long travel day.
This morning we took a bus from kind of the outside of the city. I think it's the west. €2.80 for 2 hours with transfers. And that's what we got.
We're wearing all the clothes we could put underneath our clothes just to stay warm because we've been in warm weather for a long time. Berlin is colder than it is in Barcelona, for sure.
We are going on a 2.5-hour tour with Sandeman's, and it is going to be cold.
Yeah. It's just the wind that's really cold.
It's the wind, because look, the sun is out. You can see the sun. You can get a shadow on my face if I hold the camera there.
Yeah.
But the wind, as soon as the wind moves, you're like,
it's biting. We started with a little German breakfast. We went and found our own little place away from the touristic area. It was delicious. Josh got some potato soup that looked very German. It was like little hot dogs in it. So we're good to go. Our bellies are full. And I think our tour is about to begin.
Steve, I am your tour guide this afternoon. And I'm pretty sure you figured out in the very first second, I am not German. I do not have a German accent. I am from Sydney, Australia.
Okay, our tour has just started. Our tour guide is Australian. He's been living here in Berlin, and he seems really funny.
He's done a really good job of setting the whole thing up.
So far. So we're just walking like 5 feet.
Into the sun.
Continue.
Yeah.
This probably isn't the first time you guys have seen us do a Sandeman's tour. We like to do these free walking tours when we get to a city because it kind of gives us bearings about the city, gives us a little bit of history. Because we move so quickly, it's hard for us to do a lot of research before we arrive in these cities. So it's a great way. Plus it's a free walking tour. You do tip the guide, but it's a great way also, like if you're on a budget, to learn about a city and do something during your day that is not very expensive.
And on top of that, you just get to see some really cool stuff that you probably wouldn't have otherwise.
Exactly. We always appreciate a place so much more when we know kind of the background and know about it.
It was originally built as a gate in and out of town in 1794. And in 1796 they put the big statue on top known as the Quadriga. Now originally she's meant to be Irina, goddess of peace, riding her chariot of peace, pulled by 4 horses of tranquility down into Berlin, a city famous for its peaceful history. But in 1806, a little French man with a big ego called Napoleon came and captured Berlin. Now as Nappy rode his horsey Gangnam style through the Brandenburg Gate, he looked up and he saw a woman.
Okay, we just left the Paris Square, aptly named because the statue on top of Brandenburg Gate was taken back from Paris and placed above that arc there, Brandenburg Gate. That whole area is pretty neat. It's basically the center of power and government for Berlin. So there's a French embassy, US embassy, there's even a UK embassy just around the corner, and just behind us, which you could probably not see, is the Reichstag, which is the German parliament. So that whole area is bureaucratic government and not a great place to find food. That's why Ashley and I walked down the street to get food this morning before the tour started. But we're headed off, I believe, east now. And just along this road, you can see a layer of bricks going through the center of the road. That marks the location of the Berlin Wall, where it used to be. So further on, we can actually see the wall later, but that's pretty neat to know that the bricks in the middle of the road here are where the wall was. Something I didn't know, I mean there's a lot I didn't know, but one of the things I found particularly interesting was after World War I, the Germans signed a surrender agreement unequivocally. After that, almost a civil war of sorts ensued where people were vying for power. You had communism, the Nazis, and other groups all trying to take power. And during that time, hyperinflation ensued. 1 US dollar at some point was worth about 2 trillion marks. And from that, they were able to recover. And just a few years ago, within this decade, is when Germany stopped paying its debts on World War I. As you can see, we're walking through a very interesting thing. If you don't know what this is, it's a memorial to the Jewish people that were lost during World War II. There's different memorials around the city as well, but this is probably the main one. It's about a block from Brandenburg Gate. And as you can see, there's lots of different cement blocks. You're not supposed to really be able to interpret exactly what it means, but to my eyes, it looks like a bunch of tombstones and a bit of a solitary place. A place that's kind of got, I don't know, just a real stillness about it. I mean, as you're walking through, you can see your whole landscape is altered. And the deeper you go into it, the more you're confined. It's a very interesting feeling, but it's good to remember the past and what's happened so that we aren't doomed to repeat it. Just kitty-corner to the Holocaust Memorial is this space. It is a residential area built in the 1980s by the Soviets, and just underneath, right there by that playset, is where the bunker that Hitler spent his last days in used to exist. When they built this residential area, they had to blow it up 3 times because of course it was a bunker built by the Germans, and they built this Soviet-style residential area on top of it. That is what was at first the final resting place of Hitler when he killed himself. But there is no final resting place of Hitler because his body was eventually cremated and his ashes spread in a river to just be gone forever. We're headed now to the seat of power of Angela Merkel, and we're going to learn a bit more about the more modern history of Germany.
That is the North Korean Embassy of Germany. If you're a North Korean citizen who's lost your passport, they are here to help you get home. Now this is about the only time you'll ever see a North Korean embassy. I know there's one here, there's one in London, one in New Delhi, I believe there's one in Beijing as well. And if you ever want to visit North Korea, you can now go jump through the gates and jump back really quickly. And about a month ago, my hand went to North Korea. Guys, we're standing in front of this jolly, cheerful, intimate little building here, and this is a genuine Nazi-era building. This is what the Nazis wanted the entire world to look like. Friendly, on a human scale, very cozy and intimate. Now, it was built in 1936 to be the headquarters of the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force. So this is the domain of Hermann Goering. So amazingly enough, it transformed from being a Nazi building to a communist building, which is amazing because they're the opposite apparently. But yeah, this became the East German Ministry of Ministries. It was the headquarters of East Germany. It was even the building East Germany was founded in. Now these days it is still a German government building, but nowadays it is the headquarters of the German tax department. Germany loves taxation. 10% of all the world's tax laws are German tax laws, so they had to choose the biggest building in town to hold them all. So count it down. It was the headquarters of the Luftwaffe, it was the headquarters of East Germany, now it is the tax department. Some buildings are destined for evil things. Let's get out of here.
Another fun anecdote, this building, while the largest in all of Berlin, was hit only once during the bombings of Berlin in World War II. Somehow it managed to survive pretty much intact.
I think it's interesting what he said, like a bomb in World War I, what was it?
World War II.
World War II, like if you hit within 2 miles, that was a good shot.
Yeah, especially coming over a city like Berlin where they have so much anti-air, you know?
You know, like just like let a bomb go and just pray that it hits what you, or yeah, hits what you want to hit.
I mean, you're aiming, but you're in an airplane thousands of feet up.
Yeah, that's why so many buildings were just completely demolished.
But you say like 90% of Berlin was destroyed in World War II?
That's insane.
Actually, only 10% of that building was destroyed, so the other 90%, like, is the opposite stats on this thing.
Crazy.
Aside from all the Soviet-style buildings, one little stopover from the Soviet era that I think is pretty cute in a way is the crosswalk man.
Oh man, I love him.
He's got his little arms out and then he goes with his arms swinging.
He has a big hat on.
Yeah, and that is a Soviet-style era design, and the Soviets designed that. It was part of their crosswalk system, and
he said it's just one of the small things that have stuck around.
Yeah, I find that really interesting and oddly cute in a way.
It was one of the first things we noticed.
Yeah,
when we were
Ashley's
here
like, look at the cute little crossing guy.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's on all the crosswalks.
Well, we're taking a break right now, and I'm freezing. I don't know if you can tell that I'm shaking, but the stabilization in the lens seems to be working all right. So we're gonna step inside and just warm up for a second, and then we'll come back out here. We are back on the grind, back out into the cold, And we just saw on the corner a bit of the Berlin Wall that's still up. That is the second largest intact portion in its original position in Berlin. I don't know if we're gonna see other places, so I just want to get a shot of that real quick and tell you a bit about that wall. Interestingly, the wall itself wasn't the deterrent for keeping people in East Germany and out of West Germany. It was more the whole death strip in the middle covered with spikes and armed guards with orders of shoot to kill and barbed wire and lit up at all times. That was sort of the deterrent, you know, like the risk of immediate death as soon as you went dink with your foot into the middle there.
The more he talks about the history about Germany, makes me wonder how much I actually paid attention in world history. Because all of it feels really new to me. I don't know any of the history.
A lot of my history comes from movies and reading encyclopedias, so it's a bit limited.
Just stopped us here to point out our friend the double line of bricks over here. This is that line marking the exact location of the wall. So when we cross those bricks, we cross into West Berlin for the only time on the tour if you ignore the fact we just spent our break in West Berlin. But we're going to head into the American sector, so come join me in freedom and exploitation. This way!
Yay!
Now, this is the world famous Checkpoint Charlie. Let's be honest, who's never heard of Checkpoint Charlie? Be honest. Good, one honest person down the back, one honest hand. I'm glad, because it's not a good place. Checkpoint Charlie was part of the Berlin Wall. It was part of what was tearing this city in half. So if you've not heard of Checkpoint Charlie, it's never in the news anymore. That has to be good news for Berlin. But also, this is fake Checkpoint Charlie, because the real one got torn down in 1990. The real one was a massive pain in the butt. There was a big guard tower here in the middle of the road, blocking traffic. Then there was all these zigzags that cars had to drive through. A big customs area down the back, all very inconvenient in a modern city. So they tore that down in 1990, but then tourists turned up in the late 1990s and asked where it was. So they built them Disneyland Checkpoint Charlie. But it's not a real guard hut. They are not real soldiers, they are actors. There's only one genuine bit of Checkpoint Charlie Billia here. You can see opposite me on the far corner is a big white sign that says, "You are entering the American sector in 4 languages." That sign is fake, but the frame around the sign is real. And that is the only genuine bit of Checkpoint Charlie here.
So the story of Checkpoint Charlie is quite a ridiculous one, of course centering around the Cold War era. Essentially what happened is there's an American man who wanted to head over to the east and see a opera, but they wouldn't let him pass without papers, and he said, "I don't need to give you papers." So he called his friend the general. They escalated the situation. Before you know it, there's about 20 tanks all together pointed at each other, about 10 meters apart on either side of the checkpoint. And finally, JFK, along with the Soviets, de-escalated the situation, and we averted World War III. But pretty interesting story.
While walking around the city, we've been seeing these pipes, and we were like, what the heck are they? Why are they around? They are like bright colors, like that one is pink, and we saw another one that was blue. And he said that Berlin is swamp. It's like a Slavic word for swamp, and that when they do like all these building construction things, they need to suck the water out, and that's what they use them for. They usually take them down after the project is done for after a little while, but there are still quite a few up, because we've seen them while we walked around.
Well, apparently they leave them up as modern art installations in a way.
But they're just pipes outside of the ground.
Yeah.
Painted.
It's really interesting. So many major cities we've been finding are built on swamps.
Yeah, it is really interesting. And also the thing is that that's so much work to build a city on a swamp.
Why? Yeah.
Another cool thing about these tours is that there are things that you see when you walk around the city. You recognize them, like the little guy that's on the crosswalks, or these pipes. Before we were on this tour, we were like, what the heck? Why are those there? Or what did they mean? But we wouldn't have known unless we've been on this tour, and then he willingly gives us the answers. Like, we don't even have to ask. So it's kind of cool.
Additional info for any of you out there thinking you may want to move to Berlin. Apparently, it is built to house about 8 million people. But there's less than 4 million that currently live here. So I don't know what that says about the economy of the place and how much it costs to live here, but there's plenty of room for expansion if you want to live in Berlin.
awesome. It was so fun and full of like information and history. I love that.
And comedy. Let's be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah, he
Steve
was
was
hilarious.
hilarious.
So if you guys are in Berlin, definitely come to the free walking tour. Plus Sandeman has all these other tours you can do, like a beer one. Josh, when he heard about a beer tour, he was like, let's do it.
Hashtag not sponsored, but still we like Sandeman.
Not sponsored, but we love doing Sandemans, whatever city we're in. As you can see, it is getting dark outside. Josh and I did not account for winter darkness. In Barcelona, it didn't get dark until 5:36, but it's like 3 p.m. right now, and the sun is nowhere to be found.
Yeah, it is setting, and we have clouds. All right, we have come home. Ashley has made us a fantastic platter of cheese and apples and
Peanut butter and mustard
with pretzels.
and pretzels. I got pretzel sticks.
Nice.
And we got our beers. Kind of, I have a pomegranate beer.
Don't worry, I have a German Pilsner.
While on our tour guide suggested a movie called Downfall, and so Josh and I are going to try and watch that and have a relaxing evening out. It is only about 5 p.m., but it's pitch dark outside and raining.
And freezing.
So we're going to munch on our munchies and enjoy a movie together and snuggle up, just like it feels like Christmas snuggly weather. So I hope we encourage you to get out and travel today. Definitely do a tour when you arrive to a city. It's awesome. A walking tour kind of just gives you the lay of the land and some history behind the city. So wait, fam, we'll see you in the next video, and have a good night. Good Nacht.
Oh, that was really good.
Thanks.
Good Nacht.